Hello, everyone, and welcome to day two of the 2024 VirtualCon virtual convention. Super excited to have this amazing guest, one of my personal faves, and I know a fan favorite that you all asked for, and we brought her back, Tyomi Morgan with Long Distance Connections, tips for managing long distance relationships. Tyomi, so glad that you're back with us again.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to be here.
I love to have you. So I'm going to give a brief introduction for those of you who may not know who this amazing goddess is. Tyomi is a certified sexologist, authentic tantra practitioner, and an international pleasure coach with over 13 years of experience in the sexual health field. Her down to earth approach to sexuality has garnered the views of millions of eyes around the world via her advice based YouTube channel and interactive social media presence. She is the founder of sex ed blog Glam Erotica 101 and the creator of the Cowgirl Workout, the only sensual fitness program designed to help women improve their intimate movement and mind to body connection. Tyomi's advice has been featured on several platforms and traditional media publications, including Essence.com, Ebony Magazine, BlackDoctor.org, Huffington Post, Comedy Central, the New York Times, Shape.com, BlackLove.com, and it goes on. You've been on everything, Cosmopolitan, so on and so forth, dozens and dozens of things. Tyomi currently serves as the resident sexpert and seminar coordinator for Exotica Expo. Congratulations on that, by the way, and is a
Thanks.
member of the National Coalition for Sexual Health. Her mission is to empower people to own their sexual identities and live life more sensually. Tyomi, once again, thank you for being here.
Of course, pleasure to be here with everybody in the metaverse. And I always have to big you up, Anna, because you were one of the first people to give me a chance to even speak when I stepped into this game as a baby sexpert and sex writer. The virtual space was the first platform, the first stage that I got to speak on. And I'll never forget it. And so here I am 13 years later, still excited to be in this space. So
Has it been that long? Has it been
mhm,
that many
mhm,
years? Okay,
yeah.
you have an age today. You look amazing and beautiful as always. First of all, I can't even believe it's been that long that I've known you. That it's been since you first. So Tyomi spoke at one of our very first conferences. Like she says, I don't believe it. 13 years ago. So that just blows my mind. And just a little little housekeeping. I just remembered. I am taking questions from Otherverse Classic on the stage. I am taking questions from all of our live streams that are happening. We're on YouTube. We're everywhere. So I am checking all the channels. And Miss Morgan here, as she's doing her presentation, let's do the questions in real time. So if you've got a question for her, I'm collecting them. I will give them to her. Let's keep this conversation flowing.
Absolutely, because I don't want us to just answer these questions at the very end and then it feels rushed. So I'm going to take pauses throughout the advice I'm giving so that way I can answer some of your questions because I know some of you probably have very personal things that are tailored to your individualized experiences and you just want some feedback on it. So please feel free to get as personal as you feel comfortable to, because this is your time to talk to an expert and get some things sorted out that maybe have been kind of, itching at you a little bit. And then maybe somebody else who's listening can learn from your experience because what I know is that we all are connected through collective consciousness and we're all experiencing, if not similar things, probably sometimes things that are extremely parallel. So we can always glean, advice or some type of insight from what someone else is going through. So please make sure you put those questions out there for Anna to collect. And I'm excited to give you that feedback. So, as Anna said, I am a sex and pleasure coach with many different, I guess you can say, specialties. And aside from being a coach, I am also a consultant. So, I use my lived experience and learned experience to give you suggestions on ways that you can improve your relationships. And so we will do a little bit of coaching here where I will be asking you questions, but these questions are for you to jot down and to use to navigate your experience to help you think a little differently about the situations that you're in. And so, what makes me qualified to talk about long distance relationships? Well, it's not just my learned experience. I have been navigating long distance relationships. Oh, wow. It's been a very long time. I'm just going to say for over a decade. It's probably close to 2 decades. And so, there's a lot that can go into maintaining these relationships, especially when the people who you're interacting with is primarily digital or virtual and you've never met them in real life. So let's just dive right in. So, when it comes to long distance relationships, of course, the amount of distance can vary. You might live in the same state, but maybe you're an hour or two away by car. That's kind of like medium distance. Or you might live in separate states or different countries altogether. And so the further apart the distance, the less likely of chance you're probably going to be able to see that person live and in flesh. And so with that, the main thing you want to remember is that you got to have agreements in place. You got to have boundaries in place. Because when you're at a distance and that person is not interacting with you in real time, it can sometimes be a little difficult to really check in on if these things are still in place. So you're going to need a high amount of communication, frequent communication, and not just talking to each other just to fill up the time, but you want to be able to have those conversations that are going to be those check-ins and frequent check-ins where you're not just checking on each other's emotional state and where you're feeling in your space of chemistry, but more importantly, where are you in your bond and connection, and how connected you are feeling. So that connectedness conversation and asking the right questions to kind of gauge that's going to be really important. And we'll get to some of those questions in a minute here. Now, I don't know where everyone is at. I should have launched a poll about this, but I don't know where everyone is at as far as um, the length of time that you've been in your long distance relationships. So that is a question that I want to ask first and kind of get some feedback on that to see, for many of you who are watching, how long have you been in your long distance relationships? You can either choose it's just beginning or it's new. It's in a moderate space where, you've been in a relationship between like 1 and 5 years, or it's been long term where it's 5 years or more. I'll tell you that for me, the longer the longer term relationships I feel are a little more relaxed, a little more comfortable, because I have known these people for such a long time that our agreements and the things that we choose to use as our like foundational source, like they're so solid, we've built so many layers on top that there are some conversations that I don't have to revisit as often, but there are those like quarterly check-ins or half-year check-ins where we're just seeing where we're at. But then there's also those more like common or general check-ins, and not day to day, because I personally don't feel the need, depending on the closeness of the relationship, because I have some that are like long distance and more casual, and some that are like a little more deeply intimate. The casual ones, I don't feel as much need to check in so often, but the more intimately deep ones, I do. And by the way, I am a polyamorous person, so my experience with long distance relationships includes multiple lovers and friends. So no matter the length of your relationship, it's always important to go back to the foundation. And again, these are just these moments of check-ins. You can kind of think of it like when you're on a road trip and you get to like a pit stop or you get to a checkpoint. On your journey with long distance relationships, you're going to have many checkpoint moments. So when you get to that point, you have to ask yourself, is the form of relationship that we are in still working for us? Or rather, in an open ended question, how is our current form of relationship working for us? And what I mean by a form of relationship is not the fact that it's a long distance relationship. You could totally check in on that too to see if maybe you want to move closer or even bring it into like real life interaction. But if you're already sold on this being long distance, the form of relationship would refer to either monogamous, monogamish, or open. And in open relationship, we're talking about consensual non-monogamy, which is a big thing because it's coming into like the mainstream folds. And one thing that I often hear in public discourse when it comes to long distance relationship is, of course, the conversation around infidelity and interacting with other people outside of your established relationship. So asking the question, how is our current form of relationship working for us, is important to ask. And it's important to ask it to yourself as an individual, and then to ask it in space with your partner. Because if you first ask that question of yourself, you can be completely honest about how you feel about it. And if you feel that you want it to shift or you want something different, it is an idea to explore with your partner. And so creating that space for it to be a safe environment to be able to express that you want something different is really important. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the monogamish kind of area, which for some people is like a gray area. But when it comes to relationships, I'm sure you all know by now that you can make them whatever you want them to be. So, people who typically identify as monogamish are primarily partnered with one person who um, they have monogamous interactions with emotionally and energetically and sexually. Now, with long distance relationships, the physical aspect isn't necessarily there. However, engaging in a sexual or erotic relationship is still possible because you have phone sex or video sex, even sex in using toys as assistants that have Bluetooth capability that can be controlled at a distance. So a sexual relationship is still possible with a long distance relationship. And when it comes to being monogamish and long distance, what that does is open up the possibility for both partners to potentially have engagements with other people, but within a certain time frame or within a specific type of action. So it might not be it's not going to be fully open where it's like, oh, we're actively dating other people. But an agreement could look like in a monogamous relationship, um once a month, if you need your needs for cuddling or being held or intimate touch to be met, you can go and have a cuddle buddy, right? Which um if you are in a monogamous partnership where your interactions are primarily bonded with just each other, cuddling with somebody else could be a big deal because there is intimacy shared within cuddling. So some people commonly might have heard of like monogamish processes as like a hall pass or uh, whatever have you. So that's like another version of how stepping into a form of openness can be exercised. But this is something to be negotiated. And it has to be negotiated with clear boundaries, and it should be negotiated with both people interacting and placing their needs and even concerns on the table. So it's not just for one person to make the decisions. Both people must be on board and in agreement with where this is going to go. Now, I'm going to speak mostly to um, monogamous couplings because I know that a majority of people subscribe to monogamy. So, when establishing if the form of relationship is working for you and it's a total yes, and you're still on board with being primarily with each other and being monogamous, great. Next step is talking about your needs and knowing what your needs are, communicating them clearly, and being able to communicate how you're going to have those needs met is really important in long distance relationships because that person is not there to see you, hear you, and observe you on a regular basis. Those check ins, anytime you see each other, call each other, or see each other virtually, or call each other, you're going to have to, give your partner that play by play on where you're at emotionally because they just won't know unless you tell them. So, needs are those things that help you to feel fulfilled in life. And just a basic level of human needs is connection, being seen and heard, feeling safe. And safety, we know, comes in the form of emotional safety, financial safety, physical safety, sexual safety, mental safety. Um, Also, a sense of community. And there is a need for touch. Human beings need to feel physical touch in order to feel connection. When bodies touch, oxytocin is released, you know? And there's ways that, if you and your partner are not able to see each other physically at any point in the year, there's a way to still establish like that sense of touch, which will have to incorporate imagination, and I'll talk about that in a second here. But being able to know what your needs are and how, first, you can supply your own needs, and then, secondly, how your partner can show up in support to meet your needs is really important. And
Tyomi, before
yes,
you get into that, actually, there's a question that came up that I think would be really good to answer at this moment here. It
sure.
kind of fits right in there. Someone asked from the audience, and by the way, the poll that you had asked earlier is sort of how long some of the people have been in long distance relationships. We got varied answers from a year, a little under a year, a little over a year, 3 years, and one person said 14 years on and off.
Mm.
So there was quite a varied response there. But this question in particular, how long do you recommend before two long distance couples wait, before a long distance couple waits before you meet in person? And what safety tips should they do to protect themselves prior to meeting? I thought it would just fit in really nicely here when you were speaking.
It absolutely does because I want to tell a story before I get into giving you the advice on this. So we're in the year 2024. And I remember when kind of like online dating first started. I mean, the beginnings of that, started in the 90s with the AOL chat rooms, and you didn't see pictures of people. There weren't even really like avatars back then. So people meeting from the internet was seen as like this like kind of scary thing. But even now in 2024, um, there's still precautions that we need to take, right? Especially if you're interacting with people where you've never seen a picture of them. You've only mostly seen like an avatar or some type of digitized version of them. The very first thing that you would want to do before meeting in person is, if you haven't yet, have a FaceTime conversation. And even if you've already been FaceTiming, you still want to start with a FaceTime conversation. Reason being is because you want to make sure that you know what that person looks like right here and now. People change their hair color, people get haircuts, they can change their appearance. And then in that FaceTime, what you're going to be doing is establishing where you're going to meet. Highly suggest meeting in a public place that is easily searchable. And making sure that you have your location on and shared with family members and friends who you trust. So that way they know exactly where you're at and they can track you at any time. Also, just for yourself privately, and you don't have to talk to your partner about this particular thing, but for your own personal safety, um, setting up some type of like signal that you can send to a family or a friend, a family member or a friend. So it could be like a text message of like one word or something like that. And then it'll signal them to give you a call. So that way you can, step away. So you can remove yourself from a situation if you start to feel uncomfortable in any kind of way. And the amount of time that is recommended is really based on how comfortable the couple feels with each other. Some people might feel comfortable enough to meet up after a month or two. Some might feel that they need more of an established rapport for a few months before they decide to meet in person. So it just really depends on you and your partner and how you both feel. You both want to reach um, a mutual agreement and be in alignment with being a total yes to meeting up in person. And it's very common to get the jitters, to feel anxiety, and maybe to even grow cold feet where you feel like you might not want to show up. And I would discuss that with your partner. Um, you want to maintain an openness in communication where you and your partner can talk about a multitude of things. And the reason I say that is because if your partner decides that they have so much anxiety that they are not able to actually go through with meeting up in person, even though you all have gone through the motions, you've talked about the things, you've established like safety protocols for both of you, in a public space where you can feel comfortable to engage with each other. If all of that still does not create a space of safety and that person, one or the other or both, decide not to meet up, um, make that okay. You know, if you've already established a bond with this person and you have love for them or you're in love with them, the main goal of your relationship is to stay within that vibration of love. So you don't want to see your partner as an enemy just because they chose to not show up to protect their peace. And it doesn't mean that they don't trust you. It doesn't mean that they don't feel safe with you. Sometimes it's the ideas of the unknown or the stories that come up that can cause a person to say, no, I'm not going to do it. And it's typically rooted in past experiences. And those experiences are either personally experienced or they're experienced through observation of like popular culture or other people's experiences. So just allow grace to be a part of that meetup process, but just have a conversation about it. There is no set time for when a couple should meet. It's all about when both people feel comfortable to do so. And as long as you have that established space of agreeing where you're going to meet and the activities that you're going to do, and your friends, family, and loved ones know where you are, then it's good to go. Um, I do not suggest on the first meeting going to the far reaches of the earth, like uh, doing something what I would consider to be extreme for the first meetup is like, oh, let's meet up in Cancun and party. No, sounds fun, but there's a lot riding on that. You're asking a person to travel, um, outside of not just their city or town, but out of the country to travel internationally to meet up with you. That's a lot. We want to take baby steps, y'all. Okay. And then once you meet in person and you feel comfortable, then you can plan that trip to Cancun. Once you've had a few like in person meetups to where you have that established rapport. Since we're in the question answering mode, are there any other questions that have come through before I move on, Anna?
Actually, there is, and this one is a good follow up. It's so most of us have virtual relationships here. Most of us may not have involved voice or video support. When texting your mate, is it possible to sense when things are off from just texting, or is it far fetched to believe that?
So yes, it so with texting, it's black and white. It's not on paper, but it's in text. And sometimes we can misinterpret what people are saying or what they are intending. Um, you might be used to your person sending long paragraphs, right? But then one day they're just really short, sending like a few words or even like one word answers. It could be an indication that something is wrong, and it could be that they're just busy. So the way that you avoid jumping to conclusions and assuming that something is wrong or off is to ask clarifying questions, and you do that without casting judgment on them as well. So, an open ended, non judgmental question would be, I noticed that you're using shorter words today. Um, how are you feeling? All right. Um, I noticed that you're shorter than you usually are. What is going on in your world? Would you like to talk about it? So observing, letting them know what you see and what you notice about their behaviors without the judgment, and then having an ask of clarity. So that way you don't misinterpret. It's very easy for um, arguments and for distance to occur when you're trying to read between the lines and what you're reading is inaccurate. So if you're not using a voice capability, if you're not using a video capability, there's a lot more typing that you have to do to receive clarity to make sure you and your person are still in the same uh, mutually bonded space. Any other questions?
Yes, I've got another one.
Yeah.
Well, this one here, let me rephrase this one. I'll rephrase it to be like this: how healthy, how much time would you consider healthy to spend away from a relationship? So the question was originally asked is it healthy to spend too much time away? So I'm going to rephrase it to be like, what's a healthy amount of time to spend, I guess, away from a relationship? And so I guess because we're speaking about long distance relationships, how much time should you be autonomous and how much time should you, I guess, devote to the relationship? Maybe that's what they were asking.
So this really is going to depend on what your individual needs are and what your partner is saying their needs are for feeling connected and feeling like they're receiving the amount of time from you that they need to feel secure with the relationship being attached. So healthy is going to be determined by both of you individually, and then how you show up to those needs is going to be based on your capacity. So if you're not um if you have a very busy work schedule and you're not able to check in every single day, or you're not able to sit on the phone for long periods of time, that's where you will have to manage your partner's expectations in helping them be aware of what your life looks like and your schedule looks like. And then you two can come up with a plan or a strategy for how you're going to check in and where when you're going to check in, that's going to meet both of your needs for support and connection. So you might think, oh, I'm okay with talking 2 days a week, but your partner might need some type of check-in or some form of check-in every day to feel like they're supported and they are secure in the relationship. And those forms of communication might not always be like long text message conversations or video calls. It could be sending a meme. It could be even like liking a post on your social media that they're have access to, or whatever it is. But this is why having the conversation around what that support looks like and how it can be exercised is really important. So I suggest that you don't get into your head about this and think that there is like a magical number that you must reach. It is literally specific to each individualized couple. Any other questions?
There's none right now, but what I'm interested in is you were beginning to talk about the physical aspect of things of long distance relationships. And I think that's something that a lot of our members, a lot of our people in our metaverse, they sometimes often don't get a chance to maybe even meet the person for years. So
Mm-hmm.
how do you fulfill the physical aspect of that relationship when you are separated and you don't get a chance to physically meet?
Yeah. So I always say it's time for you to go into the land of make believe and using your imagination. So, one awesome thing about our minds is that they are extremely powerful. And when we use our imaginations to dream things up or to play pretend, our bodies literally do not know that it's not real. So, for instance, if you take a moment to think about a lemon, bring the image of a lemon into your consciousness, into your mind's eye, and see its color. It's bright, it's yellow, it has a waxy surface. You can see the little dimples in its surface. And then if you're touching it, you can feel that it's waxy. Now, if you imagine that you cut into that lemon and you can see the juice pouring out from the pulp, and then you take that lemon and you smell it and it smells bitter, and then you lick it and you taste its bitterness. I'm sure by now, if you've gone through this imaginary process, that your mouth is probably watering. And that is because your mind has made the experience real. So, just like with the lemon practice, you would use your imagination to interact with your partners in a physical way. So when we're talking about sex and we're talking about intimacy, that's where when you're reading the words on the screen, or you might be listening to their voice, or you might be watching their avatar on screen. The main thing is you're going to have to do like some heavy lifting in painting the picture in your mind of what it would feel like to have that person next to you, to feel their caress. And so, even in doing that, you can take over the caressing and the touching. But with your imagination, you put that person's persona on that touch. Um, and so it is truly a game of make believe. And also, again, if you want to use technology to assist with this, there are toys and devices, especially through like VR headsets and things that you can use to interact with a partner at a distance and still feel that physical aspect of their touch or of their presence with you. So I'll say it can be a fun experience and it can be an experience where you still feel like you want more, right? And that's where then you have to ask yourself, okay, what else is there? How else can we uh, spice this up and turn this into a situation where it's not going to be the same kind of rigmarole every time? So it's up to you to get creative with the ideas around how you're going to flex your imagination in combination with your partner's input to keep that level of intimacy alive with being at a distance. Any questions?
There's actually a question that came in, and this one is, I'm interested in trying to ask my partner to include other people in our relationship. How would I begin to even bring that subject up?
So, first thing that you want to ask yourself is, um, when it comes to bringing other people into your relationship, what does that look like? What will that represent for you? Are these going to be individuals who are also virtual? Or are these going to be individuals that you both interact with in your corners of the world physically? So, if it's a situation of creating a non monogamous relationship with other people virtually, then that takes on a different life than um, having outside partners that you both agree to, engage with, but in your respected worlds in the physical world. And also in bringing others into your relationship, are you both sharing the same partners, or are you both having individual partners that you're seeing, and they're not interacting with your primary, they're just your partner? So, really becoming clear on what that looks like for you is really important before you even approach the conversation. Because if you're coming out of a monogamous situation immediately, there can be feelings of inadequacy that comes up, and an idea that there is something wrong because you are asking for, um, not even necessarily asking for, but you're bringing up the idea of engaging with others in your relationship, because they're going to have a litany of questions. And so if you're not clear on what that looks like and how you would want to interact with others in your relationship, when you start to have the conversation, it can feel a little awkward. And so in initiating the conversation, you can just ask an open-ended probing question. What do you think about open relationships? What do you think about us having an open relationship? How would you feel if I brought another partner into our relationship for us to share? How would you feel if, or what do you think about me having a partner outside of you in the physical world? How would that make you feel? So you want to really understand where your partner's head is going to be at. But the conversation is really just a bunch of open ended conversations. And it's not a conversation where you're coming in being decided that this is what's going to happen. I'm just trying to check in with how you feel. No, this is just an idea. And so I would like for us to talk in process. This is not definite, but this is just a process. Prefacing the conversation with that. Um, and also checking in with your partner's capacity to hold space for that conversation, because it can be a lot to jump into if they haven't thought of that kind of dynamic for themselves, or if they're completely green or brand new to the concept of non-monogamy, or living in relationship with multiple people. So you want to make sure you're both in a good mood. You want to make sure that that person has the space and time to have the conversation. Um, and you you want to approach and ask before just like springing the questions on them. Hey, I would like to have a conversation about the form of our relationship. How do you feel about that right now? Do you have space to hold this conversation? And then if they affirm, okay, great. Here's what I've been thinking. How do you feel about that? And then just flow with that conversation. Um, and you also want to make sure that when you are engaging in that type of discussion, that you reaffirm and reassure your partner that you're still on board with them. You still have a mutual attraction to them, you still desire them, and this is just an idea to um to explore. It's not something that you're completely decided on yet, because you want them to be on board with you, if that is going to occur. Any other questions?
Yeah, we do. Another question that came in was, when do you know when it's over between each other?
Ah, when the check ins stop, when the conversations seem mundane and dry, it just seems like all you're doing is performing the common niceties, like, oh, how's your day? Oh, what is the weather like out there? Oh, how was work? Very common, very superficial conversations, but no conversations of depth that um, would help them to understand where you are in your process of life. Because remember, when you're at long distance, like, you're not seeing your person day to day. So you really don't know what they're experiencing in life. So if that person is no longer attached to wanting to be a part of your life or being bonded with you, then they're going to check out of caring about what's happening in your life. And they're just going to go with the motions of those common, polite phrases of check-ins. Also, those in-depth checkpoints and negotiation periods have stopped. So you're not checking in anymore about where you're at in your relationship. Do you still feel bonded? Um, are your needs being met? And if not, how can those needs go? How can those needs be met? When those check-ins stop, that's how you know they've checked out. And then if it goes periods of time without you even hearing from them at all, and then when you do hear from them, it seems like they don't even notice that they haven't been away, that they've been away. And that's when you take a pause, you take a moment, and you ask yourself some questions, because I think sometimes what can tend to happen from what I've experienced personally and what I've seen in other people's long distance relationships is sometimes we will wait on the other person to say that it's over, instead of checking in with ourselves and how we feel and making a decision for ourselves individually. So if you've noticed the distance, if you've noticed the shift in conversation, if you've noticed the detachment from their end, and then there's long periods of being iced out, then it's up to you to ask yourself, does this relationship still fit within my needs? Am I receiving what I need to feel secure in this relationship? Is this relationship still in alignment with where I'm at in my life right now? And if you cannot answer with enthusiastic yeses, then it may be time for you to consider just cutting that relationship off. Don't hang on to something because of nostalgia. You got to be in the present with what you're feeling, especially in long distance relationships, because you don't know what's going on in their physical everyday life unless they tell you. Any other questions?
Yeah, we actually have a couple questions, but I'm going to amalgamate these two together because they're quite similar.
Okay.
So the amalgamation, and we're actually running close to almost out of time. So I'm going to
Oh,
amalgamate these two.
okay.
Time went by so quickly. I can't
It
believe it. But
did. Oh my gosh.
but the questions that I'm going to kind of mash together is, okay, opposites attract. So how do you handle, let's say, if someone's like super, super messy and you're like a super neat freak, like how do you handle polar opposites in a relationship?
So in long distance relationships, where is this in? I don't know if they've added any context, but is this a relationship where they're never seeing each other physically, and so we're just talking about polar opposites in like mindset and behaviors, or are we talking about a relationship where they're literally in the same physical space at some point in time?
You know what? Let's go with both. Let's do both. Let's touch on both. That that, you know what, the mindset. And then, I mean, obviously, there's sort of a point of where you're kind of hoping to get towards potentially connecting together physically in the same space. So
Right.
let's do both.
So the idea of opposites attracting, um, it's okay if we're different because no one person is going to be the same. And when it comes to the differences, you got to ask yourself, um, do how do these differences match up with my needs? If a person is super messy, um, let's say when I say messy, I mean like drama filled or quite dramatic, or they are, a gossip or something like that, and you're not that way, then you have to ask yourself, you know, how how does this match up with me in meeting my needs in relationship? And then, if you're okay with navigating the differences with those people, setting boundaries is really important. Because if a person is physically messy and you're not, and you're living in same space together, then putting that boundary in place of um, keeping things clean and tidy in space is going to be important. And so being able to assert what those boundaries are, um, is going to be paramount to making sure that that relationship is going to sustain over time. And being able to assert those boundaries in a way that's healthy. So, um, and also just like getting an idea for um, if this person is going to be willing to make those compromises. Because when you set a boundary, the other person has to shift. And if that person chooses not to shift, then you have to ask yourself the question of, is this going to work for me? Will I feel peace and will I feel balance? Continuing on with this relationship, if this person chooses to not respect the boundaries that I've put in place to meet my needs. Um, so lots of like self questions to ask, and then putting those boundaries in place to maintain those needs, and then really assessing if that person is flowing with you or if they're flowing the opposite way. And there can be a point where opposites no longer attract, because I think sometimes the opposition creates like this energy that can feel attractive because it's a challenge, and then that challenge is mistaken as like chemistry, because the attraction to the challenge is like, oh, I can make this work, I can make this work. But chemistry is not compatibility. So you have to ask yourself, you know, are these opposing things compatible with what I want for my life and how I want my life to roll and how I want my relationship to roll? And then when you can put that into frame, then it will let you know whether that's a relationship that's going to be healthy for you or not. So don't get into your mind that just because you and this person are complete opposites and you're feeling an attraction to it, that's compatibility. It could just be, a chemical feeling, um, but that's not compatibility. Next question.
Heard. Heard. You know what, Tyomi? We've got 3 minutes left.
Okay, I will land the plane with this one if there's a final question.
You know what? I'm just actually going to let you have the floor. I'm going to let you close us off. I think you've answered the majority of. Oh, wait. There might be one more. Let's see. Let's see here. Let's see if there's anything dire. Super. Yep. You know what? People just want to know if you have any last thoughts, any last pieces of advice. Honestly, I'm just kind of amalgamating the last few things that are here. They
Yeah.
love you. The fans love you. And you know what? With our new software that's coming, I hope that we're going to have you back We've got some new capabilities that are coming that I'm going to talk to you about in the future. That hopefully we're going to have a Tyomi avatar in Worlds, and you can
Yes,
come
that'll
talk
be
to her.
amazing.
Exactly.
Yes.
I'm going to be talking about to you about it a little later on, but when we're ready for that. But you know what? I'm going to give you the floor. Any last bits of advice because you were just such a goddess. You were so amazing, a fan favorite. We love having you every single year, 13 years. That's insane.
Insane. It really is. Um, I just want to encourage you all. Oh, I didn't even know my dog was in here with me. Oh my gosh, he was so quiet the whole time. Uh, um, be honest with yourself about your feelings and be unafraid to communicate about what you are feeling. And remember that your feelings are an indicator of what mindset you're in the moment, whether it's love or it's fear based or like a traumatized space. And when you do want to talk about feelings that don't feel so good, like jealousy or envy or feelings of like abandonment and things like that, you want to be very clear on what your ask is. Because when you are feeling those ways, there is a need that's gone unmet. And so you want to be careful of accusing your partner of wrongdoing, especially when at long distance, because it's very easy to try to like, point the finger and be like, you're doing something wrong. Because I can't see it, but I feel it, but I just know something's going wrong. Come in with being aware of how you feel, but asking for what you need. I've been feeling kind of distant from you lately, and I want to hear from you more. Can we check in a little more often? Hey, I really have been feeling disconnected and I want to see your face. Can we FaceTime a little later? You know, really talking about what you're feeling, not the stories that's coming up around it, but what you are feeling, what you are needing, and come with an ask. Drop the judgments, but be clear and be honest because your partner will feel distance if you're harboring feelings that you're not expressing to them and you're not asking them for what you need. Being able to express those things, especially in a long distance relationship, is so important. Don't be afraid to advocate for yourself because long distance relationships can go the distance. I have one it's 18 years in the
Mm-hmm.
making. We heard somebody say 14 years on and off. That's a beautiful thing. And just,
Naomi, I just had somebody say that they've been married for 15 years and they met here in
oh,
other verse. And after 2 years, they got married and they've been married for 15 years. And this person actually met you at Exotica last year
yes,
and
it's
wants to
funny.
know,
I
wants to
was like, I
know,
know who you're talking about.
they want to know if you and your sister are going to be there again next year. Isn't that wonderful?
Yes, we are. We will both be at Exotica Chicago. I will also be at Exotica Jersey next month. So if you happen to be in Edison, New Jersey, October 25th through the 27th, you can meet me there. It's Expert Corner. And of course, I'll be doing seminars. So hope to see
Oh,
some of you guys in person at Exotica. Um, but yeah, and right there, that is an example. Like this thing can work. It's all about making it what you want it to be. Just being honest and just being in agreement to support each other's needs and respect each other's boundaries and being on the same team of love. That's what it's about. It's not about your relationship looking a certain way. You make it what you want to make it with that other person. Use your imagination, have fun. This is your life that you get to create, and as long as you're not harming yourself or anyone else, everything is open to you. So I hope that this helped you all out, in some way, shape, form, or fashion. You can also follow me on social media, at Real Glamazon Tyomi on Instagram, at Glamazon Tyomi on Twitter. I am at Glamazon Tyomi on TikTok. I believe Anna will have, I think you have all that information
we've
posted.
got all the information. I think we have a booth for you as well.
Amazing.
Someone said you should write a book. She's got a website, guys.
Ooh, you know what? You know what? I
What's your
have a
next
lot
one?
of books in me, and so I
What's
would
your next
not
one?
mind writing a book. If you guys want it, I'm gonna put it out there. So
Make it so. You just put it out there in the universe. And next year, come back and promote it, please.
here, here.
Here, here. Thank you, Tyomi. Always a pleasure. Fan favorite. Always my favorite. I love
Pleasure
talking
is
to you.
mine. I love you too, Anna. You're amazing.
Oh, bless. Here's to 14 years next year.
Woo-hoo.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Tyomi Morgan. Again, always gracing our stage with her beauty, her grace, her amazingness, and all that information that she has to offer because she is absolutely fabulous. Stay tuned. There is so much more going on in Classic, in Xeon. We've got 2 metaverses going. We've got all sorts of stuff happening on YouTube everywhere. And a quick shout out to absolutely everybody who has been helping with this convention, to all the people attending, Sci-Fi, who has been streaming, Tiago, Ken, everybody. Thank you all for making this amazing, and we will see you at the next session. All right, guys. Thanks.